in few minutes, it is now impossible to figure out if you're talking to a human or an AI, given how the maturity of the TTS models have been now.
One of the question was, will humans be okay to speak with AI? Anything for inbound, humans don't care. They want their problem to be solved faster. Time is of one axis, and then whether you're solving it as another axis. There's only two things. Solve the problem at the least amount of time. Now you do it with AI, without AI, why will I care?
This whole outbound thing will also change in my mind to be more real time available in the place where the customer is. My assumption is all these interfaces will become a lot more conversational, and you can directly talk to somebody on the website when you have the question as a user.
Right now, the investors think in two buckets. One is AI companies, which is Ringg, Nurix, and all the other companies that we know of. And second is AI services companies, which is pure play app development, AI automation. It's interesting to know that both of those will converge at some point in time. They're also building voice AI use cases for some of their clients. You are also expanding beyond voice as well to other capabilities where you can automate it end to end.
Inbound requires a lot of trust. How do you build that trust is the first question. Ring, it's a very small company that just started, right? You can't just give your entire calling operations to Ring, which is inbound, which is much more dangerous in that sense, right? You can lose your customers. And inbound is a much more complex piece in that sense because it needs a lot of context about you and you interaction with that company.
For the same use cases itself, like as you're saying, now other industries or even now they are ready to go from L1, L2 kind of use cases to more L3, L4 kind of use cases.
Just to put that framework to that use case, earlier I used to just look at where's your use case closer to the revenue. Is it top of the funnel where you're just filtering people versus is it closer to funnel? I would say customer support is much more closer to funnel and it's distance from your top line than anything else. But I think it's a good nuance to say that there is L1, L2, L3 across this. As you get more closer to revenue, the complexity increases in some form and shape. Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 of Moonshot Projects. So Anuj and Kali, since you're not familiar with the podcast, maybe a couple of episodes before, we have been speaking to founders and investors in the ecosystem. We pick kind of specific theme, try to bring in people who are very, very relevant, the top-notch relevance within our ecosystem for that theme. Just try to explore that in depth, right? So the first episode, second episode, we spoke about raising a 6 million seed with 3 founders who have raised all 6 million seed, talking about how fundraising work, right? Then the next episode, we spoke about growth investors and how growth investing is changing with a couple of our friends who have been spending their time. So I think now we are moving towards more themes. So we are doing voice AI, you're doing AI services, exciting themes, inviting founders to speak about what are the most interesting opportunities from India. And I'm looking from a global stage. If a global investor is watching out, what are the themes that they would look at? And who are the most exciting founders, builders building in that space? And what are we actually seeing on ground in that setting, right? So voice AI seems to have all the excitement and would love to dive deep what's really happening on ground. So maybe we can, get started with some intros. Khalif and you first. Would love to know a little bit about you, where you are born and brought up, your journey prior to Ring. And I'm also curious to know how did you guys, decide to start voice, maybe a few years before. What was the thought process there? So if you can give a brief, detailed intro, that'll be super helpful.
Yeah. Hey, hi everyone. This is Kali Charan. So I'm the co-founder of Ring AI. I'm currently as CTO of Ring AI. Born and brought up. I was born in Vijayawada. I was born and brought up in Vijayawada. So that's a town in Andhra Pradesh. After that, I had done my BTech from IIT Hyderabad. That was from 2012 to 2016. After that, I joined Flipkart. I think that's where the craze for startups actually kind of came into me. That I enjoyed actually working there. Though it was a big org by that time, but
Yeah.
the pace at which people executed, the ownership that the people took, like this, I found a bunch of very smart folks, and then
Which team are you in that, Kali?
So I started in a company in a team called Jeeves. So Jeeves is basically the after sales delivery of Flipkart. Let's say you buy an AC, the installation person who comes is basically Jeeves. So it's a wing of Flipkart. So I was at that team. Then I was at the communication platform. I think you might be getting a lot of push notifications during the sales. I am one of the culprit of that. So we scale the systems to kind of send around like 5 lakh push notifications per second as a scale that used to operate because everyone they want to send the notifications within 10 minutes.
You are an engineer in that team? You are an SD?
No,
or-
I started as an engineer.
Got it.
Then I was at games team. We built a bunch of games, the R&D retention engagement team. Then I did a short stint as a product manager too over there. Built the games platform over there. And then next I was at Byju's for a short stint, and then That's when actually I met Siddharth at Flipkart. So that's one of the, he's the CEO. And I mean, we were dabbling on the side from almost like 20 to.
You met most of your, other two co-founders in Byju's and Flip.
No, at Flipkart, I met Siddharth and Sid and Utkarsh they know each other. So
Got it.
I met
Got it.
Utkarsh after that. So we used to work on side projects, etc., thinking, checking what's happening and building on the side.
Yeah.
That we started. I think it started as a Desi vocal. Ring was not Ring. It was we were building a textual solution. This was, I think, we started around 2021, 2022. So we were
Okay.
there in the space for that long.
But what are you guys playing out initially with? Like anything and everything in
Initially, so the goal actually was to kind of build a video platform. AI generated videos was what we were thinking. Not then Sora X doesn't exist and it's not that evolved. We were thinking of much more vanilla format at that time to start with. Uh, so that's when we thought, let's build the text to speech solution first, and then because for a video, speech is also required. Right? So that is what we started building. And while we were selling that solution, that's when I think the concept of Ring emerged.
So you guys had like dropped out and started building full time at this point, or you were just dabbling with it while at your
Dabbling, at least for the Desi vocal part. It's just out of curiosity and all. So we were doing some analysis, etc. Do people really want this? That's when Ring as a idea started. It's more kind of an inbound idea, I would say. Somebody else who was running a call center business said, "Hey, there's this technology I see that is starting." This was almost 2 years ago. Not voice AI was not famous by that time. That's when that is basically the inception of the idea. That
Got it.
there's a pull from the market that we've seen. I'm ready to pay. Can you build the solution? So I think the
But
first
why
line started
from
almost.
video to voice? What was the key reason to shift? I'm still very curious on that.
Sorry.
From video generation to voice, what was again the key reason to shift?
It's very a bit of costly process if you say video in terms of processing and all, and there are a lot of pieces that need to kind of sit right. And frankly, at that time, we were not able to see the market where exactly to go and the direction and all. And Ring, the voice AI solution, voice AI calling felt much more promising because they're
Got it.
buyers already. The moment we just said that we are going to do this, there were already buyers that were there. So think of it, it's more of the market pulled us.
Got it. And within that, did you choose by saying that, I see a lot more stuff happening in the US. Let me try and do some of that in India. Were you seeing some action in the US at that standpoint?
Yeah, I think the very early companies just started at that point.
Okay. And what within voice were you trying? Were you trying outbound calling at that point in time? Were you selling to someone or were you just
So it is more of outbound to start with because it's a much easier use case to test with. Inbound requires a lot of trust. See, again, it was very in the very nascent stages, right? For someone to kind of do an inbound calling, it's they need to trust. How do you build that trust is the first question. So that's when
Yeah.
why do they trust Ring? It's a very small company that just started, right? You can't just give your entire calling operations to Ring, which is inbound, which is much more dangerous in that sense. Right, you can lose your customers if you're not servicing properly your customers, which is much more trickier part. And inbound is a much more complex piece in that sense because it needs a lot of context about you and you interaction with that company. Let's say you purchase some order on any e-commerce. Now, what are you referring to when you said you had an issue? So I need a deeper integration with the company's systems and all. And to even go there, the company has to trust. The company has to show the use case that we have done some POC and this is working right. So to cross the threshold, the best way to start with is an outbound use case, which
Yeah.
is much more simpler. And we had a no-code tool, of course. So you don't need any developers also to get involved. The moment you go for inbound use case again, you need developers to be involved because there's API integration, etc. with the company. Outbound is much more simpler. No integrations with your company. You just give a list of users to call, and then what is your goal, and then the agent does it for you, and then gives it back to you.
Got it. No, thanks for that detailed intro, Kari, and super helpful to understand the initial journey and how it came about. Anuj would love to, get to know you a little bit more. Although you've spoken, would love to, for the audience, would love to know more.
Sure, Saurav. Hey, Kali, would love to know about your journey as well. So, talking about mine, I am born and brought up in Rajasthan. Like, started in a small city called Bhilwara, and then moved to Jaipur. So, did my schooling there, and then went to IIT to study computer science, and then worked as a software engineer for a couple of years in a company called Arista Networks. So didn't really enjoy the systems programming part there. Thought,
Both
okay,
of you
I
started off as engineers.
sorry.
Both of you started off as engineers, like
Yeah, I
SDs.
think that is pretty common across everything. By default, you'll find somebody who was an engineer and then they decide what their profession should be. So yeah, I mean, after that, decided to go for a MBA and figure out what's next. And did my MBA from IIM Bangalore, and then was fortunate to get into a company which was doing great work. And I joined Sprinkler at that point of time.
Which year
And
was this, Anuj?
it's 2017.
Okay.
So yeah, almost 9 years ago. So joined Sprinkler and there started leading the AI product team. So like very coincidentally, like AI was just like a buzzword at that point of time, and I was given this mandate that is there any value we can derive from using AI? And this AI is very different than what AI we think of it right now. So it was more around classification, modeling, and all of those things.
Yeah.
Using deep learning, which was the wave then. So we built a lot of different products across 5 different modules of Sprinkler, and like in 3 years Sprinkler became like front and center focused on AI. We had a lot of different capabilities across our uh, product portfolio and selling to like some of the top companies in the world, like almost top 8 or 9 brands in the top 10 consumer brands, right? So had that kind of an exposure in the enterprise SaaS, and then I wanted to try something in the consumer space as well, as I was very excited about building for direct consumers, and that is when I moved to Cult. So this is exactly when the COVID happened. So when I joined Cult, like that was a completely different experience on consumer versus like an enterprise product line, right? At Cult, I started leading the overall marketing automation charter, built the platforms, migrated all the third-party solutions to one in-house solution across marketing stack, and
Yeah.
then grew my charter, started leading the overall horizontal products as app, website, and then towards the end leading the growth product overall, taking care of the acquisition, conversion, activation metrics. And then
You
post
felt like
Curl,
a
I
bit.
think
Were you working with Mukesh at that
not
point in
really,
time?
so not at that point of time. I think then I decided to do something else. So one of my very close friend from undergrad, he was in US, like having worked at Airbnb, Facebook, like he wanted to try something in the software space again. And I thought to join him and focus on the product function there. So joined that, did that for around 9 months, but didn't find the domain very exciting personally. So thought of maybe doing something else, and that is when.
What were you doing? What were you trying at that point?
So that was building a solution in the cloud marketplace solutions. Right now, let's say when any company buys software, this software buying is a typical process of finding. Let's say today you're looking for a CRM. Maybe you'll go to Google, search for it, and then once you identify, okay, you want to buy HubSpot or Salesforce, then you'll have a deal cycle. You'll do the payment through bank transfer and all of those things, right? Recently, AWS, GCP, and Azure, all the hyperscalers have come up with this software marketplace. So as a buyer, because I already have a commit in terms of the credits for infra.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of time people lose that credits because infra is not consumed. So they decided to unlock this wallet to also buy softwares because software is a much larger spend. So
Yeah.
that is where all these companies have a software marketplace, and you can
Yeah.
buy most of the softwares from that marketplace and through that wallet. So you also get some kind of discount from that because that is what hyperscalers provide you when you commit to a larger amount. The company which we were working on, like that helped you manage the overall revenue operations for this channel of software. So it was targeting SaaS companies, revenue operations folks, and streamlining their operations from a software marketplace transaction point of view.
So Anuj, from there, how did Nurix happen?
So yeah, then like because I was not really enjoying the domain as well, and coincidentally at the same time, Mukesh started this new company, right?
Yeah.
And also some of the initial folks in Nurix are people who I have worked with in the past.
Yeah.
So naturally that.
But what was the thesis for even Mukesh to start new, like was he playing around with video, audio, everything platform, or just
Yeah, so
curious?
I think the core thesis of Nurix was that with Gen AI coming in, it was very clear that how the work is done in enterprises will change drastically. That is a core belief based on which, like, even our vision right now is not limited to just the voice. It is more around enabling enterprises to run in autopilot mode. And in that, when we started discovering, so then what happened was that we started discovering, talking to many enterprise customers and see where the traction might be. And at the beginning, as I think Kali was also mentioning, a lot of these businesses were okay to try AI in certain functions, but not at everything. They're still skeptical about AI capabilities, quality, risk, all of those things. And one thing which we realized, where the chord struck, was more around conversational agents, so the use cases around lead qualification, customer support. That is where people were okay to try it as a POC. And even the global signals, like what was happening in US, was more around that. So we decided to really double down on the overall conversational AI agent interface. And that is what we started building, like almost maybe more than a year ago now.
Yeah.
And then right now we have, I think, a pretty mature platform to build out a voice agent and a chat agent, like a omni-channel kind of a view for the use cases around lead qualification, customer support, recruitment, all of those kind.
Good. No, again, thanks a lot for that detailed intro, Anuj. I think maybe I can give a quick, viewpoint from external, not building that standpoint, how investor sentiments has been changing, that we've been spending time thinking. Would love your thoughts on that. So I think, one thing that has become very, very clear is in the enterprise side of things, we see some use cases that just started to deliver huge value, right? I mean, in India, we see a lot of BFSI use cases happening. In US, there's a lot of customer use cases that's doing well. But beyond that, there's also a belief that voice AI is going to be a default UI for applications across. We also see robotics and others trying to figure out voice AI as a UI for them. So there's huge excitement for that. I think there's a lot of narrative on India as a right to build and right to what. I'm curious. I'll maybe pick your brains on what do you guys think on that bit. But there's also been a lot of things that we've been spending time understanding and thinking about in terms of how will that play out, right? Like we saw the model layer now trying to get into apply. We're seeing 11 Labs, for example, or even the infra guys trying to get into the applied layer. We see a lot more horizontal plays. Some use cases are not working. So really thinking deep on what is the right competitive advantage to build, and are you thinking about that bit? But before we get there, I'm really trying to separate of you mentioned a couple of use cases, Anuj, where you're starting to see lead qualification, recruitment. Kari, you talked about a lot of outbound use cases. Would love both of your thoughts in the last 6 months, especially. I mean, prior to that, we have some sense. What are the kind of use cases where you're seeing really voice AI do a really, really good job? And maybe there are some use cases where it's yet to do, or maybe the buyer intent is not there, where they're very apprehensive to put a voice AI, maybe at the bottom of the funnel, or the middle of funnel use cases, or the compliance needs are so high that they don't want to. I'm just curious, where are you seeing the action, the real ROI coming in? Buyer intent is there, it's working really well. Versus what kind of use cases is it harder to deploy and see results in, right? Would love your thoughts, both of you. Kali and Anuj, please free
Yeah,
to.
I can go first.
Yeah.
I think mostly the information collection is more or less sorted, I would say. Um, Other than even in, I would say, information collection use cases, there are few nitty gritties where voice AI still suffers if you want to get into depth, like capturing email addresses, right?
So when you say information collection, this is again more top of the funnel. You're calling
Yeah,
somebody to
saying that
understand
I want to collect some information for you. Let's take an
Okay.
example that I'm doing some order delivery. Will you be at
Yeah.
home? Simple information collection, right? BFSI, as you mentioned, let's take a simple use cases. Will you pay your loan amount on time? Basic.
Yeah. Or even recruitment for that matter. What's your CTC? Where are you at?
Yeah,
Whatever.
so all the basic questions, etc. I think voice AI has almost cracked it. Other than, as I said, there are few things that still no one has cracked it. I would say, because I follow
Yeah.
everything, which is like email. It still struggles a lot.
Okay.
Because you can say Saurav.global at something fireflies.com. So it might mess up those words and all.
Yeah.
So that is a very few edge case where it fails, but more or less, as I say, information collection is a sorted problem.
Yeah.
Where next voice AI I think is evolving is more intelligence use cases. I think intelligence will be the key to play on. Like collection, there's no intelligence much. It's just your it's just a one way conversation. You ask a question, you take it. Wherein your customer support kind of a bit comes in, right? Think of how can you big companies, like small companies as well, and think of big companies where they sell multiple products. And let's say you give a number that for any issues, call this. And now your issue could be with anything, right? Let's take your let's say you take some stockbroking platform. You might say that my money is stuck. I've withdrawn my money. It hasn't reached my bank. I've sold something. I can't see the money in the wallet, right? I have applied for IPO. So the use cases are across, right? The company is the same, but a company might have multiple products which they are selling, and that is where this, I think, more intelligence game is going on, where in you solve more of your inbound support agents, and also on the guardrails, right?
But
It
I
will be
understand why information collection is solved for. I'm really curious, what is the hard part of solving that intelligence use cases in terms of, is it understanding the context on what exactly needs to be
think
done?
of like this, right? You are an external company. To understand all that, you have to work with the company. And also, one person in the company might not know the across use cases as to what are all the customer support that comes up, right? There
Yeah,
might be one product manager who's handling one specific product, right? If
yeah,
some issue goes, he's the right person, or that team it has the entire knowledge of the product. Now imagine you are building an agent for them which
mm,
solves your entire customer support. No, you have to go and speak with almost everyone who handles different functions and
yeah.
understand what are all the use cases, what all can this do, how do you integrate this. There, each team has their own. Think of microservice
It takes a lot
architecture.
more organizational context, is what
Yes,
I mean. Yeah,
your business context. You need to understand the business. You need to understand everything. You need to you should basically, I would say, act like a product manager of that company who's
yeah,
handling the entire customer support. You have to
got
speak to each and every team, understand from the CX what are all the things that comes up, go through the past recordings. And this is
it.
not a very simple thing, right? And it takes a lot of iterations because you're offloading the entire customer support. As I said, again, retention is a key metric. Once you lose customers, it's very difficult to gain back now because of what malfunctions. And then if your retention hits, then it's a gone case, right? So
Yeah.
you have to track your, so basically we track customers business metrics. That's how Ring operates. We act like an extension of your team, not as a separate company. And then we have basically their company and us, both of us see a common shared metric of their business metrics as to how.
Would love to go into depth of how that ring operates, but just sticking on the use case bit, Kali, what apart from a customer support will be an intelligence use case for a company? Is there any other
Um,
example?
yeah, I would say activation problem. We are still doing some POCs wherein, uh, again, we are trying to do across the funnel, from your activation till the point of retention and revenue. But
Yeah,
anyways, very specific on the activation, from acquisition to basically retention. The activation problem is, think of it like this: you came onto the website.
yeah,
You let's say you logged in somehow. I made you kind of acquire. Let's say that
yeah.
problem is solved for now. Now you might have a high value use case. Activation might be different for different companies. Now how does an agent help you kind of reach there? Is someone kind of facing issue in filling a form? uh, can you kind of, how do you make it simplify that? How can an agent sit on a website and then help you kind of onboard completely? And
This is not telephony for that matter. This is more.
there's no telephony.
There's no
Like
customer support.
Ring is telephony is just voice is
One
one
part of it.
modality. It can be your text. It can be the voice embedded inside the website. It can be via telephone. It can be WhatsApp. Ring does all that.
Yeah.
I've been saying this is an activation use case. So how do you kind of help companies activate their customers once after acquire?
You're kind of guiding them through on what needs to be done while help. Okay. And that means a lot more intelligence on what. But isn't that much more simpler than having an organizational context? I mean, the screen is visible. You understand where the user is going.
Yeah, so putting that on the website and all, I think it's still not yet full blown that you see currently.
Yeah.
uh, because their telephony modality as a thing has been solved and integrated into the companies. Bringing in inbound use case has been much more easier, rather than this is a complete separate thing where you're telling I want an agent which is embedded inside your website and it is
Yeah.
helping customers, etc. Now that's a different conversation, right? So you have to navigate the organizational boundaries also. How do you kind of get into there? Now that's a different conversation. That's a different challenge.
Got it. No, fully understood. And thanks for that, Kali. Anuj, just thoughts on, do you more or less agree with that? What are the use cases that you're seeing? That's,
So on use cases, like I have a slightly different way of answering this, right? So you asked about voice AI. Voice AI is a capability for me,
yeah.
right? So it's like in some ways we are trying to build a human through AI. Voice actually gives this agent a capability to speak and understand, right? Apart from that, like voice AI itself has a capability. There are obviously like some things or long tail which needs to be fixed. And especially, let's say, when we are trying to build in India, the complexity is much more compared to, let's say, building for US, which is more one language oriented kind of a country. Whereas in India, you have multilingual kind of problems. How do you deal with a lot of cultural nuances? The infrastructure itself, let's say the kind of models which are available in India, deployed in India, the kind of telephony which we have compared to, let's say, the telephony infra of US. All of those things are also which different in terms of just the voice agent capability or the somebody's capability to talk over a call or over a app or over a website, right? So that is one part of it where things like if you ask today an AI to a voice agent to slow down, let's say, can you speak it slowly? Doesn't really follow that.
Yeah.
Or when you try to use non-verbal gestures, it is difficult for it to understand, right? It is difficult to understand the frustration just from your lot of audio signals. So those are the things which I think will become better with time, and I'm sure it will be like 6 months or at max maybe a year where it will be very close to how humans actually deal with it. The second part is the kind of use cases where the traction is coming up. I think talking not just from an India perspective, but overall, customer support has been the number one use case, mainly because one, where AI has been able to crack is that the problem statement which you're trying to solve has enough impact. For example, when you talk about countries like US, customer support infra was very bad. Either they are outsourcing it to Philippines, Vietnam, India, and people are anyways frustrated. The eyesight or the customer satisfaction scores are very poor by the design. And second, it is very costly for them to provide the support. People have to be on wait for almost 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So it's anyways a very frustrating experience as a customer support pre-AI era. So that is where it gained a lot of traction because the alternate resource, if you deploy humans, that is also costly. Now there is a huge cost advantage, a very good experience advantage as well for countries like US. For India, the kind of use case I think what Kali mentioned, right? So for India, customer support, the difference of the alternate option, like we have very cheap labor compared to let's say US. So just like let's say the per minute pricing of whatever the voice AI you will build versus of what per minute pricing of a human in India would be, won't be very very different. So it is difficult to really justify that 100.
US companies as well, they're also anyway outsourcing to us or Philippines, right? Like,
In that case, the experience is pretty broken. Let's say when a US customer calls and the Philippines guy is speaking to them, the accent they don't understand. So there's just a lot of problems from an experience point of view also.
got it,
And
got it.
because Philippines is outsourcing, they charge much more compared to let's say somebody charging like a Philippines
Got it.
company.
Yeah.
So that is where the cost difference also comes in. The second, for India specific, what I see started was like all this spam filter kind of use cases where AI was used more like that. Why to waste humans' time where the end user might not be interested? So let's say selling like a loan or a credit card. You call lakhs of customers, 2% show interest. Tell me who those 2% and my human will connect to it. So that was the first beginning of this, and then I think then we started venturing out into more customer support use cases. That is where we really focus on the CX kind of use cases where experience really matters because it is not just about like a spam filter, but the customer experience is prominent to ensure for the kind of industries we are also looking at, right? So we build a lot of capabilities there to enhance the CX part of it. And then I think the overall use case, let's say if we talk about like an outbound kind of a use case, it's not just like talking on the phone because that is you are just executing what somebody else has decided. Maybe these are the questions to ask and all of that. When you're thinking about the overall outcome, the outcome is that okay, I have these leads. How do I sell, let's say, a credit card to them? This might need a lot of different levers. So for some customers, when we were working, we like had different kind of pricing levers, offer levers. If somebody's showing interest, if their objection is pricing, do I have any kind of leeway to actually give them some discount on top of it, right? So all of those things actually drive the outcome. That is where again, like we. So our thesis has been more like as Kali was saying, very similar to for more outcome driven. So we do like a consulting and a product and a services kind of a intersection, right? So that is the kind of use cases now which are coming up. And to the third part, which you also mentioned in the beginning, which is like the conversational interface. So again, like as a capability it exists, now where do you deploy? It depends on whether the information is very, very critical, not very high risk in terms of, let's say, even information capture. If you're trying to, let's say, deploying a voice agent in a banking customer support would be very difficult because banking also has to audit percent of calls. They have to provide the right data. Even if they provide wrong data, there can be a lot of regulations, litigations, all of those things can come in, right? So
Yeah.
slightly more still risk covers from that lens, but wherever I think it's more trivial that people are just doing the same thing again and again. That is, and where the context is also pretty much built. So for customer support, typically the attrition was anyways very high.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more documentation of how the SOPs are. There's a lot more training which happens every single month. So because of that, the processes are much more matured. It is not like very ad hoc fashion. So that is where you can give all that context to AI, and AI can really digest this fast and build a capability which can easily replicate like maybe top 10 percentile of the agent.
And Anuj, you said something interesting. So what I was trying to understand was from a technical capability, being aside everything else, what can voice AI do right now? So to Kali's point, looks like outbound and information collection is largely solved for. You can call, voice AI can understand, and have a decent conversation as well. Now, from a technical standpoint, there's two nuances, right? One, it should be at a level where the humans are engaging with you. So if you're not able to understand, can you please slow down in the frustration and the human stops engaging? That's problem number one. The problem number two, as Kali said, is are you able to retrieve what this person said? Maybe you're not able to retrieve what email IDs or some of those nuances. Given that, I mean, BFSI outbound use cases largely solved for. It looks like it's working really well. Customer support across industry, I think at least in the US, they're doing a decent job. Are there any more use cases that's doing really well right now? Or as you said, Anuj, when it comes to a level where the AI can understand that, hey, can you slow down, etc. Some of this other next set of use cases that could be unlocked. Customer support, I understand as and when AI gets a lot more better in understanding those nuances and context, this will be way, way better, right? So apart from customer support and this is across industries, BFSI sales, outbound sales, is there any other? Also, there's an industry nuance to this, right? Some industries are just very averse just because of the compliance factor, maybe healthcare or maybe those kind of industries. So I'm just curious, is anything changed over the last short period of time, or do you see something changing in the next few months that's unlocking more use cases or more industries for you, which was not happening in the past?
So more than the voice capabilities, I think just the intelligence of underlying models getting improved, and how you are able to pass the context is not related to the voice but more agentic side of things.
Yeah.
That is getting much better. So with that, let's say complex things, let's say when you have to do 10 different API calls, understand what data to actually get, not being able to share data with Kali, right? All of those things matter. So now that is becoming much better with the underlying model intelligence upgrade.
Yeah.
So for the same use cases itself, like as you are saying, now other industries or even now they are ready to go from L1, L2 kind of use cases to more L3, L4 kind of use cases. Apart from just the customer reach
So
out for,
L1, L2 is more top of the funnel, L3, L4 is more what? Is
no,
it?
I mean, let's say for example, customer support use case, right? So typically there are easy customer support queries. Let's say, for example, where is my order, right? So
Yeah.
it's more like information sharing and then maybe some controlling of anxiety. But
Yeah.
then there are complex use cases that maybe I had this loyalty reward and then I had also placed this, what happened, and maybe which needs more degrees of solving across supply chain, multiple teams, right? So that is the kind of problems which I'm saying is L3, L4 kind of problems. So where
Yeah.
complexity handling by AI is becoming better, so it's just getting more depth into these use cases. That is one lens. Second is we discussed only customer right now, right? But if you look at any enterprise or any company, they're not just talking to customers. Any conversations are happening one with the customer as a stakeholder, but then they are also talking to their sellers, they are also talking to their vendors, they are also talking to the potential candidates. So these are other areas where the use cases are getting attacked. Even the internal communication. So, for example, we heard of Glean. Glean started like the enterprise search kind of thing, which is more internal employee support. So
Yeah.
that can also be done via voice instead of just like a text agent. So you can have IT support, you can have HR support, all of those things where people need to reach out to somebody. The end person shouldn't become a blocker. AI is really getting well adopted in all of these different streams.
Just to add to that, I think also we are seeing that people wanted some chats bots to their internal sales team, so that based on the conversation, etc., the AI kind of suggests the best thing to the person, and then the human can kind of speak.
Yeah, and another use case like which is very interesting is also a lot of mocks. So for example, a voice agent can help you prep better for anything. It can be your client meeting, so a sales mock tool.
Just to put that framework to that use case, earlier I used to just look at where's your use case closer to the revenue. Is it top of the funnel where you're just filtering people versus is it closer to funnel. I would say customer support is much more closer to funnel, where it matters so much more to your revenue, and it's distance from your top line than anything else. And maybe bottom of the funnel, like collecting information, is somewhere in the middle, right? You're collecting information that matters, but it's not as close to revenue. But I think it's a good nuance to say that there is L1, L2, L3 across this. There's much more complex, maybe, and as you get more closer to revenue, the complexity increases in some form and shape. And where in that, current technical capability assumes it like L2, L3, and there's some nuances that yet to be solved. Email collection is one of that, and there'll be no nuances where voice is not able to catch what's happening. And the
Sometimes
second
it
is
is,
not able to understand your frustration, or when you ask me to slow down, some of those things as well.
I would say industry specific also. Like example, you should understand those words, right? For the model.
Yeah,
And then there are few words that the models generally can't inherently understand. So you need a lot of training, etc., and you will need a lot of in-house models. Right, you can't just rely on the state of the art models. Like example, like as where we found that the words, etc., none of the models kind of properly understand. And a lot of business context, the words for your business that are there might be different and not generally kind of fed into the model that are there. So these are the things that also matter, that what are the words you generally speak, etc., and then those words needs to be understood, because the moment if it doesn't
okay.
understand, no point. The entire thing is your translation basically of the voice to basically the speech to text. If that itself is messed up, there's no point. The entire underlying flow is broken. So that is where I think also is important, that are there anything in the business, etc., those words that are spoken, which the
So very domain specific conversations are of, like, as Kali saying, right?
Yeah,
That might need maybe more fine tuned models, or maybe purpose built models for those industries, those domains. Like discussing like a insurance processing for a healthcare partner.
yeah,
You will
yeah,
speak like a lot of drug names, which typical your speech to text models may not be able to understand. That is
yeah,
one. I think second thing to your question around where voice AI might not work is, like, let's say when we are doing outbound use cases.
yeah,
Now, assume Saurav receives a call and you pick up the call and you realize that it is an AI. First, you are not interested to talk, and second,
yeah,
you feel you're not even talking to a human.
yeah,
Like, you will be very frustrated. You'll just disconnect the call. So, from an outbound perspective, I feel that is one major problem
yeah,
where if you deploy it for sales kind of use cases, I still think
yeah,
like sales is still a human skill, and that is where, like, might be one of the last places where AI might take over,
mm,
but if never. But I think it is more about whether customers are okay with that or not. So let's say in a customer support kind of use case, because it was pretty early adopted as well. If I'm frustrated that I want to get, let's say, my flight rescheduled, instead
mm,
of waiting for 15 minutes, it's better that I talk to somebody who can help me and get my work done. So
yeah,
when I'm reaching out, my
yeah,
threshold of who am I talking to is also slightly lower compared to, I realize that maybe I have to talk to AI. So in outbound, it is very important that your voice AI is more human like or not. In
yeah.
support, it is more about whether you can do the right thing or not.
Got it.
so
But this
initial
is super. One of the key. Sorry,
one
please
of
go ahead.
the question was, will humans be okay to speak with AI?
Yeah,
I'll start with, but as Anuj rightly mentioned, anything for inbound, humans don't care. They want their problem to be solved, whether and faster,
yeah,
right? Time is of one axis, and then whether you're solving it as another axis. There's only two things, right?
yeah.
Solve the problem at the least amount of time. Now you do it with AI, without AI, why will I care? Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
I think even for outbound, frankly, I would say it's very difficult to distinguish now a human versus AI,
yeah,
until and unless the conversation doesn't go a bit deep. After probably 3-4 minutes, probably you might see some repetition of words, etc. That's when you think it's an AI. But I don't think, frankly, during conversations we saw that people don't realize, at least in the first few minutes, they'll say, "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Bye."
no,
Uh,
there's a. I've been
Okay.
trying out a lot of voice AI tools, and even when
second, realize
working
that
app,
that
they
limit of-
confirm are you an AI, because sometimes they take a time to respond, and my mind immediately goes probably an AI. Sorry, Anuj, you're saying something.
Now, I was just saying that that's completely true. Typically, that is also one difference you'll see in an outbound case, because the connect rates are lower, the engagement rates are lower, your average call duration would be much lower. Now, because let's say in 10, like in few minutes, as Kali saying, it is now impossible to figure out, may not be impossible, but at least very difficult to figure out if you're talking to a human or an AI, given
Uh,
how the maturity of the TTS models have been now. But the point is, if you realize, even in 10% cases, that makes it a difficult use case compared to this.
No, and before we double down, I would love to dive a lot deeper into inbound versus outbound. In outbound, there's so much more things in my mind that could go wrong. I mean, we don't have a regulation in place to stop you to do that. In US and Europe, you can't do that, right? And there's no market for that in US and Europe. In outbound in India, although you're doing it, there's one aspect of being able to the buyer's receptiveness. In inbound, as you said, Kali, you are the needy one. You know, you need the parcel, you need it resolved. Whereas here, even when humans call, we're cutting it off. That's number one. Number two, we have an active true caller and spam filtering system that could get even more better as and more as AI gets a lot more better, and a lot more things that will come in outbound. So, would love your thoughts there. But before that, Kali, you talked about Ring AI being an extended team to your team, right? So, can you give me some sense on how you are thinking? I was a give me a little bit more color on what Ring AI does today across industries, and also currently, what's your end state vision to be what?
See, for the end state, as I said, we want to be across the business funnel, right from acquisition to your retention, and
Yeah.
also kind of do revenue. We want our agents to be across that. I'm getting in, like example, lead qualification, etc. Sits in the acquisition channel. As I said, now we are focusing on activation problems also. Retention is of course your customer support, and then revenue. Can you try to sell extra? Probably an embedded agent on your website. Probably is saying something, etc. Can you push it? So we are kind of giving that business intelligence. We want to be that intelligence company which works with your business, and we have
Yeah.
agents across the funnel, right? So this is our end goal. Voice is one of the modality, right? Right now we have a lot more things already products, but since we started with Voice AI, the company is branded like that. But nonetheless, so that is where we want to go. So the thing is, mostly it would start with one use case. That's when think of someone from our team who's from the business team. Mostly they are ex product managers in some companies. They get to the company, right? So they understand their problem. Like, what are you trying to solve? What is a business outcome you're trying to achieve? Right? Think of there's no ring exists, right? So they think like that first. Like, what are we trying to solve? What is the goal? Is this even the right fit, etc.? Then we have a suite of products. Then they kind of see which of the ring products, etc., might currently solve it. Probably 90% solve it, 10% might be pending. So we might do it in a roll out phased approach that we
Yeah.
roll out for this first use case. Was meanwhile there'll be a team that will build the core platform team that we have, and that person, the PM whom we have, is accompanied by an FD, right? This role is getting very popular, where this
Yeah. Yeah.
engineer goes and works with their team, the engineers within their team. He
Yeah.
works with their PM with this, so it's kind of a mix now. Multiple people, multiple product managers, right? And then this engineer kind of understands that product managers we need, and then this person kind of tries to combine and gives a business use case. And that's how we kind of run. Like it's a kind of small pod that goes and sits in that company. um, and then we understand the use cases. Then probably there might be adjacent use cases or the same problem somebody is trying solving in a different team. So
Yeah.
this person kind of goes and speaks across. Uh, and then this engineer is the one that kind of helps their team to kind of integrate with our services. So this person sits.
That's a classic FP model, so to say. So nobody in their org had to come and build their own voice agent or anything. They just need to give you
Yeah.
the context. It's somewhere closer to you give the comfort of an IT services company in terms of handholding them and understanding their context, but at a
Yeah.
much faster pace cover to thanks to AI. But Kali, I'm curious when you do across capabilities, not just voice, you're doing chat and others. What is the core capability that you're heading at? And also you do across use case, across industries, right? Like from activation to retention across a couple of industries. So what is the core capability that you're building over time?
So I mean, currently we started with, as I said, loan collection outbound. So at least,
Yeah.
as I said, that's why the core platform is built in such a way that it's not we didn't focus on very specific industry, because again we thought that we will be kind of limited if we go in such vertical space around probably 1 year back, right? So that's why our platform is very horizontal. Probably very small modules might be very minuscule modules might be built very specific for that vertical, but the core platform is built in such a way that it's very horizontal, right? So as I said, the agents, etc., via voice is solved. Now we have a platform for chat completely built now, and it is kind of evolving at that level of voice as of now, because it's very nascent stages, but it's evolving. Like, how do you make a embedded chatbot, right? It kind of gives you a calendar. It opens a calendar view inside. I want to book an appointment, right? It doesn't take you anywhere. A small calendar opens inside it. So how do you kind of give very easy to use experience to the users of our clients, basically, is what we are kind of heading. So once we build that, that's when it kind of goes and gets into companies, and then companies might ask more. That's why we kind of generalize instead of building very bespoke solutions.
Yeah.
The core platform will be built in such a way that it's just configurable by anyone on the team. Uh, that is the modest
But
kind of
Kali, for example, when you first talk to a customer to actually deploy and get it live, given that you're a person actually hand holding them, how much time will it take? Because they need to go and understand the context and spend time, a little bit of services.
It depends on the complexity of the agent again.
Yeah.
If it is a simple agent that you're building to kind of, as I said, in the simple outbound use cases, probably it will take like a couple of days just to get on the FAQs, etc., and all to kind of guardrail the LLM.
Yeah.
But if it is a if you're building an entire customer service, again, it depends on how big the company is, right? It can be probably we might build a customer service agent completely for a company within 1 week, or probably it can take 1 month. uh, Again, the scope of the big company, if you're like 5 billion company, $5 billion company, of course you have a lot of products under you. As you are probably $100 million company, you probably have one or two main products. So it varies across a lot of time, but you can take typical as for a decent complex use cases 1 month, because um, the point is it's not just building, right? You're then doing an internal testing.
Yeah.
Because
And refining it.
Ring team will do the first basic level of testing. Then you're
Yeah.
asking their team to do the testing. They will
Yeah.
roll out internally across the company, and then you're getting feedback. There's a feedback loop going on. Then
Yeah.
you do a POC on very small set of customers. Then probably a bit larger set of customers, and then you do it in the whole full product.
What you said, they don't need to have a large scale or even a very, very experienced AI team to do this because you guys are helping them end to end. They can have a whatever basic tech team
Yeah.
from their side.
Basic API integration is what we need. So it's not any AI capabilities that we need. It's just that we need some developer, etc., to expose the endpoints with what the product manager has said. Hey, I want this information to be kind of fed into the agent before answering, right? So somebody has to supply me with that. So
Got
those
it.
integrations is what the Zev team mostly will be kind of making sure that the agent gets the right amount of context.
Got it. Oh, sounds good. And it's just curious from your end and how you have been thinking about some.
Yeah, I think very similar, but I'll talk more about the points where the differences might be, right? So one, we have also recently started giving our platform to some of the customers, especially the customers where you mentioned. So typically, say what is required to build a voice agent. One is like, do you have you built the overall orchestration pipeline and it has everything, the workflows, whatever work is required, pre-call, post-call, analytics, like a typical software platform, right?
Yeah.
All that we have built. Now, on top of that, some customers are okay to build on their own. And this is especially where there is more tech product DNA, and we are talking to those teams that they believe, okay, now they also know how to build it. They just need the overall orchestration layer and they can build on top of it. So that is where we have given the platform also, and people have just built production grade agents directly using the platform
Yeah.
and deployed in production. The second kind of companies, especially when we are talking to, let's say, non uh, or a more of a business user rather than a tech product user, in that case they might treat that, okay, I need some support on building this, and that is where, like, very similar to what Kari was saying, we also have like our arm which helps customers on the overall implementation delivery. So we also have a product plus engineering kind of a setup which
Yeah.
helps understand like what is exactly required, converting their SOPs into more something like which agent can understand. So more like a agent operating procedure kind of stuff. So we have both models. We have seen getting this traction more from now companies as employees are also getting more mature in how to use AI.
Yeah.
'Cause every enterprise is pushing it top down.
Yeah.
So that is where the point is, okay, I also want to build it, but instead of building the whole orchestration layer again, let me just reuse what is available in the market and
Yeah.
then on top of it. So that is where we are at right now. It's kind of a both kind of a scenario from a voice conversational, so for a conversational agentic platform. The overall grand goal or vision, as I was mentioning in the beginning, right? So when we started, uh, we raised like almost $30 million. So we're very fortunate to have that kind of a runway and everything. The vision was very clear that it is the first offering is the conversational AI agent, but it is not limited to that.
Yeah.
And the enterprises are maturing. What we have realized is now they are open to do a lot more, even in the internal workflows, a lot of different business workflows which can be agentified right now. If you see every person, are they like really doing meaningful work, or is it a lot of trivial things where we have deployed humans right now? A lot of
Yeah.
those things are getting traction, and that is where we are going after as a second offering,
Okay.
where we will have like a platform which is built out to agentify any kind of workflow very, very fast. Uh, because we have this overall platform of conversational agent, all these agents can be directly plugged into this, but any kind of application build very fast. So AI application has some parts as a deterministic software and some parts which are more agent driven based on the workflow the enterprise is trying to automate. So that is the second offering. Having said that, like what we really want to be is that if at any company, if they're thinking that, okay, this is a workflow which I want to automate or agentify, the first name should be Nurix. That let me go to Nurix and get this done. So that is the kind of play which we are thinking right now.
Got it. And so Anuj and Kari, two key like themes to just double down on, right? One is this outbound versus inbound. I'm just curious, are you long term bullish on serving outbound use cases and talking about maybe 5 years down the line and so on and so forth, where you're building capabilities for? And that outbound doesn't exist in a market other than from India, right? So I'm also curious, are you thinking of building a global AI solutions across markets? I'm not sure, apart from maybe India and Middle East, I'm not sure of the regulations there. Outbound is not a constrained market, right? Definitely not in the US, not so much in the Europe.
I'll just add on that. I think there are some clients of us who kind of tried outbound. I mean, Ring of course provides across US, Middle East, and then India. These are three primary markets.
Yeah.
Coming to US, I think the pickup rates are very low. Most of the calls just end up in voicemail.
Yeah.
We have seen that there's hardly very less point of kind of doing outbound calls in the US.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and again, so in India, I think after this recent regulation by the RBI, etc., and all, and try, I don't think with this, I think 1.6 and 1.4 series and all, so I don't think the pickup rates will be as good as it was earlier. So
Yeah.
I would say basically the outbound will be on a downtrend.
Hmm.
And as I said, it's more of a commoditized product right now. It's very cheap to kind of do some outbound call and collect some information, etc. With you pay, etc. There's, as Anuj mentioned, I think at the start, that in India the difference between human versus AI in
Yeah.
outbound much more cheaper. I would still argue that in the inbound case it's much more costly because depending on the use case, etc. You are kind of the call can get forwarded to multiple teams, etc. Based on the time and all. If you add, it still makes sense for an AI to do that because it's faster. There's one more angle you can add. AI can solve your issue faster than a human. At least from there, the cost, etc., can be justified. Whereas as an outbound, it's very damn cheap to hire an Indian kind of to do a call, and that's why as I said it's a commoditized AI product initially to start with.
And
Yeah.
sort of like I'll just add one point to it. I have a very different point of view on outbound. So when we talk about outbound, we are saying that we are reaching out to the customer to do something.
Yeah.
Now, doing something is typically, let's say, sales.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get leads? Typically, let's say, apart from people buying data, it's
Yeah.
mostly the leads which you have gotten is because those product people might have shown some intent
Hmm.
on your product website or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
So let's say this whole outbound thing will also change in my mind to be more real time available in the place where the customer is. So let's say, for example, if I'm trying to uh, find a school for my daughter,
Hmm.
now maybe I go to like some school's website and I want to know more about the school fees and all of those things. Maybe right now the typical flow is fill details and say, okay, request a call back and something like that. And they'll call maybe 1, 2 days later. And then maybe I'm not available. I would have forgotten a lot of things, right? Instead of that, this outbound calling happening, my assumption is all these interfaces will become a lot more conversational, and you can directly talk to somebody on the website when you have the question as a user. So it
Yeah.
will always like become so the whole bucket is more customer experience oriented. We'll continue to improve the customer experience by ensuring that when customers want it, you
Hmm.
are available rather
Yeah.
than you trying to reach out at a later point of time because there is a human capacity gap and all of those things.
Got it. No, I think I fully agree to that, Anuj, and I'm just doubling down on that bit. So we broadly agree that reaching out outbound, where you don't know if the customer is in the mood of buying, do they have a problem, is gonna face some headwinds given the regulatory and others and no larger market, whatever. But let's take inbound for example. When you talk to buyers, when you're doing POCs or whatever, we see buyers do 15 vendors across markets like India and Middle East and whatever. They're talking to people, they're experimenting, and at the end state also they go with more product. And this is just not to voice AI, right? This is across even AI SDRs to others where they have the optionality to do this. I'm just curious, what are the things they are really, really obsessed about? I mean, customer experience is hard to measure. So I'm curious when they are talking to you, what are the key things they're looking at for POC conversions as well as to expand wallet share? Because I'm trying to understand of the 15, 16 people they do POCs with, who ends up in the longer game? Like, what are the capabilities or things they really look for?
Business metrics and depends on company to company. Let's take an example as again you said BFS as a major client. What do they
Yeah.
what do they want? They want customers to pay it on time, right? Now let's say I evaluate a lot of companies, voice AI companies. What would I look at? I would look at for this whatever A/B test I'm doing. This section of the people, how many people kind of paid on time, right?
Yeah.
So that's my main metric. Forget all that. So that's it. Whoever wins will kind of get it,
So
right?
yeah, I mean, I have a slightly different point of view there. Like that is the reason of why you are looking for a vendor.
Yeah.
Ali mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, that is the business metric movement you're hoping for.
Yeah.
But during this whole deal cycle,
Yeah.
you crossed a lot of different stages and a lot of different people. How I think through this is typically the first stage when you are meeting them like as a customer, or let's say we are going to a customer for the first time, will be showing a demo and people will be assessing 90% based on the voice quality, whether it sounds like human or not.
Yeah.
Because it's like 1 2 minute kind of a demo. What else can you actually check? You check
Yeah.
for that, maybe you check for some interruptions and latency. Unless latency is bad, nobody will even think about it. So those are the first meeting kind of
Yeah.
key metrics to look for, or key things people look for. After that, let's say the deal is signed, or let's say you're building a POC. Then when they test, the second stage, when let's say you have built an agent and you've given them to test, they are always trying to see if it will break at any point of time. They're just trying to break the agent. Break the agent in terms of like ensuring it does not do any kind of brand reputational risk. So more around guardrail checking is a core piece in that stage,
Yeah.
and some kind of adherence of the SOP. The third piece, let's say you just went live today. The
Yeah.
next week is all about whether what are the edge case scenarios which is happening. Are you missing something on that? What did we cover? What did we miss? How to handle those scenarios? Those discussions are happening. So it's more about those iterations. How quickly can you improve as a vendor in those 1 2 weeks kind of period post going live? After this, let's say you have become stable. 3 months later on, nobody is listening to the calls. It's mostly the thing which Kali mentioned. Is the business metric moving or not? Because all these discussions are happening in a meeting where neither the calls are listened nor the vendor is present. If your business metric is moving, then it's a success. Otherwise, like, all these things might not be important, right? So the end goal, I completely agree with Kali. I'm just saying, like, during this whole phase, what people actually look for in other vendors.
No,
Yeah, it's more of qualitative, as Anuj mentioned to start with. I was coming more from a point of, let's say you have a lot of vendors now, you have a lot of voice AI companies now. Now let's say a company like should choose one among four. Let's say you all
look at business moving metrics.
these are all basic filters that I went through. More or less, let's say everyone is fine, at least from my qualitative that I heard. Like I can't benchmark like metric. This is 1% or 2% higher than the other. I can't say it. I'm say fine. Both are almost the same. Now I think that's when what we have seen customers doing is this happened for us also, right? Where they kind of evaluated 3 to 4 agents, did an A/B test, and then ran it across 1 to 2 months, and then whoever kind of had the highest business metric performance got the deal.
So that's super helpful, guys. The key thing that I've been thinking about a lot is outcomes, right? Like, for example, in sales, it's fairly clear on what the outcomes are. In experience, in your so again, one thing you guys said is super interesting, which is I'm sure when the episode comes will be interesting for everyone, is that usually right now the investors think in two buckets. One is AI companies, which is Ringg, Nurix, and all the other companies that we know of, and second is AI services companies, which is pure play app development, AI powered agentic workflow automation companies, and you have a bunch, right? Like you have Rapid Canvas and Unify, and a lot more guys coming up in that segment. It's interesting to know that both of those will converge at some point in time. They're also building voice AI use cases for some of their clients. You are also expanding beyond voice as well to other capabilities where you can automate it end to end. But in some viewpoint, you're more specialized, have much more capabilities within voice and voice powered workflow automation. And in that bucket, the largest, at least from the outside, looks like outcomes will come when you're able to charge for outcomes, right? Right now, more or less, it's per seat or per minute pricing. And given that you're moving much more closer to revenue inbound, looks like all you're headed there where voice can really do that. I'm just curious, what kind of use cases are you really able to qualify the outcome and quantify the outcome and see if it happens? Like for Kali, the business user also, they need to quantify some of their experiences. Like customer experience is quite quite vague in that sense to see how has it really delivered or not. And
Uh,
number two, which
I mean,
cases?
yes,
Some
sir.
cases they're able to quantify, but are you able to charge per outcome as well, right? In some cases, maybe they're able to understand internally, but you're not able to charge. Are you seeing anything happening on that front?
It's still we are experimenting with it. I think yesterday there was a post by Salesforce CEO where
Yeah,
is it Salesforce? Sorry, HubSpot, where he said that $0.5 per closed ticket, right? And I think $1 for lead. Basically, I think it will move a bit, but I don't know how much people will be comfortable with as of now. I think it's still the industry has to try. Probably everyone might not be comfortable. I don't have an answer to that yet. We have been trying a bit in some
but
in.
have you been trying to define saying this is the end outcome that we define? For example, a customer experience use case or something,
Think of
an NPS score or some of the things to just say that let's
I
align on
mean,
this.
it's an analysis of the call. I mean, even after the call, we have a Salesforce platform. You can see what happened in the call, exactly the recording, the transcript, what happened to the basically the analysis of the call. You can extract information. So I think based on that, you can fairly say whether the call ended with the customer problem resolved or not, right? Versus not. And sometimes it might not get completely problem solved, then you transfer the call directly to a human at that point. So you can see all these three metrics, and then your definition sometimes might be different. Like example, sometimes a sales call might be that, hey, are you interested to buy this? Let's say you're buying some insurance policy, and I said yes, fine. Now you're out to the human. That is what probably a success metric for some company might look like, probably the percentage of the calls, and then we give you per number, because a very warm lead you have kind of just now transferred might be your number. So different companies can come up with kind of different success metrics, and then the pricing can be based on very different cases, because we are not serving just one industry and one use case, right? It's very horizontal play. So the definition will be changing across this thing.
But any pointers from you on that?
Yeah, I think the outcome based pricing is pretty important. Like everybody around the globe is discussing around that concept. I see two major blockers like for that, or blockers, or let's say two prerequisites in some ways. Number one is these metrics should not be gameable right from either side. That is
Yeah,
one core piece, because as a vendor you might do something to just increase that metric. Let's say support conversations, right? How many did you close, but did you close it where the user was actually happy about it, or at
yeah,
least user felt that you resolved the query, right? Or that is one kind of thing where there will always be some friction between the customer and the vendor, that what is the right definition, and there might be subjectivity involved. So wherever we can clearly define outcome and it is very objective in nature, then it will work. That is first. Second, what we have seen is typically the finance teams, because when they do AOP planning, they want cost structures to be as much predictable as possible. Now, let's say
yeah,
we were working for one of the customers in the BFSI space, like a large enterprise, and we moved to this model of outcome based pricing. And now the finance team was like pretty frustrated because they didn't know how much cost to attribute to this vendor.
yeah,
How will they plan their financials?
yeah.
Because tomorrow if we do really a good job, then maybe the it might just become 10x, or maybe it might become 0.1x, whatever it is. But that predictability does not exist in the system. So that is another thing which, at least there is a lot of legacy burden of thought processes and all of that, because of which the customers are also sometimes not okay with outcome based pricing.
I
Got
think
it.
that's the reason of also this chat GPTs, etc., giving
Yeah,
those
yeah,
$100 fixed plan is where that emerges, right?
yeah.
I
I
want
think
to know,
guys,
guys, give me the ballpark number around this you have to play, right? At the end of the year, this is what I'll pay you, right? They want that fixed amount around. Otherwise, I don't think they'll be comfortable with basically the token based, etc. And all.
yeah. So, guys, one last question, and we'll leave you to it. One of the key things from what we discussed is that inbound sounds super interesting, and what do you look at? The biggest market was obviously going to be US. Uh, but I'm just curious on when you think of a global player from India. There's a lot of say. I think the Cartesia founder posted about his trip to India and saying India is the best place to build voice AI products, thanks to XYZ reasons he mentioned. I see a lot more talk about it. But I'm just curious on what was your thought process on when you go global. There's already CRO Decagon sitting in the US and multiple other companies across the geography. What is number one the real India advantage, if any at all, that you guys feel? And number two, what are thought process on competing? Right, like for example, when we talk about outcomes and defining that outcomes, I see huge value in going vertical in let's say healthcare. And you have some companies doing just Wi-Fi healthcare. or just voice for one industry? Because you get, as Kylie mentioned earlier, more nuances, maybe words you could catch, and ability to understand how to say it, how to handle the customer better. But if you're going horizontal, which again Sierra Decagons are and they're doing pretty well, I'm just curious on a thought process on going global. Is there an India advantage? And number two, what do you think of how do you plan to do that?
Yeah. One thing is the complexity that is there in Indian use cases, etc., is another level. One of the major players from the US actually they tried in India and they went to one of the companies that we work with, and the complexity of the systems, etc., the use cases and all that are there. I think it's crazy. Like if you can kind of go till that scale and then solve for the customers in India, and Indian customers are the most demanding customers. Trust me on this.
Yeah.
Right, we have
Yeah, yeah.
worked across Middle East, US. Like they want the best quality at the cheapest price. Now, if you can crack that in India, right, the same quality I'm saying can be sold in US very easily. We also we never built anything specifically for US by the way until unless few telephone integrations. And whatever we built for India for the customers is just exported. As I said again, the platform play. Like build it very generic that everything is a configurable thing. Is what I believe in building platforms across teams at Flipkart. So again, that comes with the core DNA. The point is with that I think you can go to the US and again going to Sierra Decagon, they're more into a bit of services play, as you said. Um,
Hmm.
I mean,
Are you saying their services play mostly? I think
they're
Sierra
kind of
is more self-serve. I don't know. I'm
no, so
so
they also go with FD model.
okay.
Right, Sierra Decagon, it's not complete self. So like I don't think any company scaled to that level with self. So
Yeah.
we also give also, but again to the lower end of customers. But once enterprises get in, since they're paying huge amount, at least in India, that I see that uh, they want proper support and then your team kind of coming and then helping fixing the problem, solving the agents and all.
Yeah.
So I think that is the advantage. Complex data build, you're doing much more like language switching problems, right? In India, probably in US you might have Spanish plus US you have to support. So all these things are very simple extensions. If you can build in India for the complexities of a year, I think it's very easily you can kind of expand to the US, at least from the tech point of view. I guess sales and business is a different ball game. I'm not going there. Now there to crack and all that, that's a different thing. But at least from the tech building, from a tech standpoint of view, I think once you solve majority of the use case problems over here, I think it's very easy to kind of expand into the US. And of course, your margins will be much higher because you're
Yeah, and you have, I mean,
usually
one thing I can clearly see is your much more lesser implementation cost, more support cost, whatever, given your engineering talent is sitting out of here
yeah,
in
of
India.
course that is one aspect.
And
And
second
also
is you're
you
more
already
robust
sorry.
in noise. I mean, how calls happen in India.
Yeah,
Much
that's
more
what I'm
noisy.
saying. The
Yeah,
complex is much higher in India. Like people are in
yeah,
traffic. You still kind of have to kind of get that call done properly and all. Uh, so from that standpoint, I feel entire the voice experience, etc. If you can solve in India, I think it's very easy to kind of expand. Again, if you're building again horizontal products, not just that. And going to vertical, the stress on, as I said again, once uh, see it's a different difficult thing to kind of say about that. Do you want to kind of restrict yourself to that? Let's take healthcare. Like, do you want to restrict myself to healthcare, or do you want to kind of be horizontal? I think if we see how we operate, as if we see more patterns across the companies that uh, are kind of almost the same in the same sector, that because we are working horizontal. I think it's easy to kind of spawn a sub team which can kind of build a vertical structure on this horizontal platform that is built and then give completely a business OS. So there's nothing stopping in that, but probably it's about time, the conviction, the
yeah.
amount of knowledge that you got, and also the amount of investment that you want to put. I think it's called sometime we have to take probably to go drill down into particular thing where we see a lot of juice to be extracted.
Got it.
Not
No,
right now because there's a lot of stuff going on, but probably someday.
got it. Just curious, Anuj, what your point of view on that?
I think, see, typically India advantage has been, or let's say any country geography advantages are two folds. Like one is more cost advantage because of, let's say, a relatively cheaper labor compared to where you're trying to sell. So IT services was born on that. I think the same thing now with AI, how much will be productized versus how much will be more service driven. And right now, at least what with Ring also what we are seeing and at Nurix as well, companies want that at least in for for the last year or maybe for next couple of years, people want external help because the expertise does not lie internally. And
Yeah.
that is, as you said, implementation cost is definitely one big difference. And the product differentiation is not that much. Like right now, building is so easy that just the product modes or tech modes is very, very difficult to sustain
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
So that is definitely one key advantage from an Indian perspective. And second, the complexity, as Kali mentioned, which I was also mentioning in the beginning, just for the your and complexity. One is on all the nuances, let's say noise, languages, and all of those things. But again, the running cost advantage. So one is implementation cost advantage, and second is running cost advantage because customers are a lot more demanding. You have relatively like maybe humans available in the same rate. You're constantly trying to also see what is the best cost structure in which you can provide the good quality. And when you have a lower implementation cost, lower running cost, same product, like then it might not be like any US advantage because the innovation is becoming more commodity now. It's more about distribution.
Got it. No, super. And thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for making the time. I would have loved to take your brains a lot more across multiple things, but it's very, very interesting to deep dive on a couple of things we said, especially use case. I think I got a lot more perspective in terms of what kind of use cases can be served and where the complexity exists and so on and so forth, right? I'm sure it's helpful for a lot of people who are thinking about YCI. I see a lot more, enterprises trying to use YCI solutions across and them even trying to figure out, where does it work, where does it break. So thanks a lot for making the time and this is super helpful. Hopefully have you guys in some other episode as well.